Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait a couple more minutes and we'll get underway. Okay, good morning, everyone. Want to welcome everyone back. I just got back from vacation, so I'm feeling quite rested today. Hope everyone's doing well, and it's sun shining like it is here today. We're going to be doing the second part today of influence and persuasion. It's not as concrete as some of the topics we're talking about, but hopefully you'll get some good tips and tricks today. Just a reminder, because I can hear some background noise there, for everyone to star 6 so we can keep it nice and quiet on the call. Of course, anytime you want to talk, though, feel free to do star 6 as well. Or you can also mute on your phone if that's more helpful. So if anyone's not got it on there, that would be great to stick it on mute. All right, so we're going to talk, last time we talked about persuasion versus influence and what the difference is. And I'm not going to go over that again today for time. Levers of influence as well, which we will bring up a little bit today. We're going to talk a little bit about process of influence. So what are the sort of map that we're going to walk through today? What's resistance? So you're trying to influence somebody, you're going in, you're creating some relationships with folks. Where do you see that resistance, and what does it look like, and what are some things you can do? And your network and how that plays into your level of influence within your organization, your community, with your customers, etc. So in terms of the process of influence, we talked a lot about credibility last time. And credibility is one of those things, as we discussed, that you bring to the table. You can't create that in a conversation with a client or a colleague. Over time, you can. So oftentimes, that's actually already set before you walk in the room to talk to somebody. So how critical that is. So we talked about that last time. We're going to talk about the next number of elements here as well. So the first one being, what's your position? So before, and I know you guys know a lot of this stuff, we're just going to reiterate a few things. So what are you actually trying to do, create, change with that person? Maybe it's a new client, maybe it's a new colleague, whatever it might be. What are you actually trying to do? So whatever position you're taking on something. So say, for example, I want to increase my budget and I'm at the leadership meeting and I really want to try to get get some money from another department, or I'm trying to change a structure within the organization, or you're with a client and you're trying to change something or try to bring them along in terms of what their coverage is. Maybe they're a little bit not understanding the benefits of some of the new things that you guys are offering. So why is it important to them? The biggest thing with regard to influence, with regard to creating relationships and having them sort of come over to your side of thinking, is understanding what's important to them. So what is the value for them? I might think something's fabulous. Oh my gosh, we got this new coverage. It's amazing. I can't believe it. Oh my gosh, they put this together. The companies put this together, and I think, we can get this from 2 or 3 of the different companies and offer it to our clients. It'd be a great asset for our clients. Unless you can actually get them to understand why it's valuable for them, it might be something very outside the box for them. They may take them some time to do it. So you really have to understand what your position is, but also how it impacts them. And then we're going to get into a little bit about stakeholders in a few minutes and how that plays out. So if you're looking at it from their perspective and your perspective, so you really need to understand their landscape. What's going on in their world, what's happening, what's going on in your world. How can you look at different different things that might be going on, but also what are some common things? What are some common opportunities and restraints? Yes. Oops. Someone speaking there? Feel free to speak anytime, anyone. So to start that conversation, you got to find something that has a little bit of commonality, right? Whether it's something negative or positive to get the ball rolling. And then you really need to start asking questions to understand more about their situation. So what's going on in their department? What's going on with them? How are they working with their budget, as an example? How are they working with their numbers this year? Didn't they just, have a few people leave? Have they got some additional budgetary money there that you could tap into, or how could that work? Or if you're overtaxed and you need some more staff, or how do you actually create those common interests and so they can understand what you're talking about and a common reference point. So if you're understanding that, then you got to pull on the levers, which we talked about last time. So the data, I'm not getting my work done. Our department's really struggling. Here's what's actually happened. We're losing this, we've lost this. Or if you're with a client, what's the data around, the research, as an example, or what's happened in terms of the industry that you can help support what you're actually presenting to them that day. And then what's compelling? So what's the vision of, okay, imagine this or imagine that, or we're struggling in this, we're struggling in that. Imagine what we could get, the opportunity. If we can get that extra money, we can actually bring it over the top in terms of hitting our numbers. And that's great for the whole organization. In terms of what fears could be triggered. So if someone's going to give up their money, what if they need it in another 3-4 months? What is it with a client that, that's an extra, gosh, that's a lot on our premium, and that's an extra $5,000. Can we really afford that? So how are you mitigating the risk? Can you really create that emotional connection with them so you can actually see that positive outcome? And then your own credibility, right? So when you're actually thinking about your own credibility, what works for you or against you? Is this a new client? Is it a new colleague? Is it somebody that you don't have credibility yet with? Or is it someone that you have credibility with and it's going to be an easier conversation? Or is it also something where maybe someone else has more credibility? Maybe if it's a client and I, for example, I work with you and I used to work with them, or I know them through my kids' soccer or anything. Is there something in terms of commonality? Maybe we know each other in a certain way that you can tap on in terms of any sort of credibility to get them to come over to your side of thinking. So I just want to start with a little example here. So this isn't uncommon. I know budgets are always tight, and I know conferences are always tough to get people to go to unless they're locals. So let's just say you want to attend an innovation conference, something new, something what's going on in the industry, something completely different in Miami, of all places, next January. So your counterpart in another area of the company went a few years ago, and they came back and made significant changes and improvements. So what could be your position? So you're going to your boss and you're asking for not a small amount of money. You're asking for probably, who knows, it could be up to, $4,000 or something like that to go to this conference. So I want you to just type in the chat or feel free to speak up. What could be your position on that? So how would you actually position it to your boss? Well, just stick with boss for today for time. What would be your position with your boss? What would you say is your perspective that you would bring to the table? So just someone typed that up in your chat box.
Do you want the keyboard? No, I don't feel like responding.
Just to do a *6 there for someone who's not on mute would be great, unless you want to chat up. I'd love to hear it.
Oh, I was surprised I didn't ask her to sleep in my car when I went to tea bread.
Sorry, I can't hear you. You're unmuted. Are you trying to? I can't hear if you're trying to speak up there. I'm not sure who that is. So what's your position? How would you sell it to your boss? Educational? Yeah, absolutely. What else could you do? What else could be a selling feature there? Why would I pay you $4,000 to go to a conference? Could be experience, yeah. You know, there's so many things with, it's funny, coming from an HR background, this is something so common I see. Yes, actually, thank you for that, willing to share knowledge with the rest of the company. So when you think about it, if one person can go, yeah, you could be the first to hear about it, exactly. So you go off, it's innovative, it's cutting edge, and you can bring it back. And here's one of the big things with training, just so you know, is when you come back, you should always have some sort of lunch and learn or some way of transferring that information. So it's a great selling feature. I can go away for $4,000. I know it's in Miami, but I can go away, make notes. I can come back to a PowerPoint presentation or whatever the heck it is, and we can actually bring our whole company up to speed on all the innovative things that are going on in the industry. So that's pretty exciting. There's also a history there with the person who went before. Someone went before, they came back, and all these changes happened. So there's experience there. There's a sense of, well, how risky could it be because it's been done before and there's been significant positive change and improvements that happened before. So you got to think about it. So what is and if you know your boss, what is it about them? Are they all about innovation? Maybe not. Maybe they're risk averse. So what could that mean? Could it be about your clients? Maybe they're very client focused. How can you make that emotional appeal about the clients? Think how excited our clients would be if we could bring up maybe a little white paper or some little something around what we've learned, or how we can sort of elevate ourselves above our competition. So it's just something to start thinking about. It's not just around going to a conference. So how can you elevate it in a way that makes sense and brings value to the organization, maybe your team and your boss, okay? So in terms of understanding your stakeholders, so you've got your position, you have a sense of whoever you're going to be talking to or trying to influence, you have a sense of your position. So who do you actually need to influence? It's a huge question, and I've done it myself, I'm sure you have as well, going in and actually talking to someone or thinking that it, like from a customer perspective, there's a new company or there's whoever it might be, say you're in the commercial lines and you're going into a new company, you're having this great conversation, great relationship, and you've already got credibility with this person, only to figure out that even though they've got this VP title, they're actually not going to be making decisions, or not in that regard, with regard to what you're trying to talk to them about. So you could have invested all this time and effort for nothing. So who actually are the key stakeholders? Who are the people in your department, with your customer? Who is it that actually makes the decision? Who are they, first of all, and who makes the decision? You don't know. I mean, for those of you that are more personal lines based, you know, hey, is it the spouse? Is it the son? Is it the daughter? Who makes those decisions? Who are the stakeholders in that family that would make those decisions on their insurance purchases, right, in terms of coverage? So decision makers, who are they? Are they actually going to be the final decision makers? Are they someone who's just impacted by whatever comes in, you know, in terms of their coverage? Or is it someone who actually can influence them? So I influence, maybe there's a risk officer, it's a big organization, they've got a chief risk officer or something like that. Is that the decision maker or is that the influencer? So are the people within the senior executive, are they stakeholders? Are they just being impacted? Are they influencers or are they actual decision makers? You got to figure that stuff out. Taking time and figuring out who's who, and even asking somebody if you have a connection or if you're talking to a personal lines client. So who is it in your family? And I don't know the exact word you guys would use, you know more than me, who makes those decisions, right? Who's very sort of knowledgeable about your current policy. So asking the questions, who makes those decisions, is not really that difficult, and most people are happy to tell you. And then gauging receptivity and assessing motivations. So when you get perspectives on your stakeholders, they're all going to be different. I mean, who isn't? You don't go into an organization and everyone's the same. So how do you actually understand what their perspectives are? So how do they like to receive information? We're not going to get into all this because this gets into personality differences and learning differences, but just to give you some ideas. Do they like to receive information? Are they visual people? Do they like to work from a technology perspective? Are they very savvy with technology? If you're going in and doing a presentation, does it need to be cutting edge? Does it need to be visual graphics? I mean, do you know anything about them? How do they like to receive it? Do they like lots of information, less information? What energy level is required? So if you're going into a marketing communications firm, as an example, to talk to a senior person, you're going to have some passion and energy around what you're doing. I'm being stereotypical here, but just to give you an idea. Is there a level of energy if you call someone, if you're personal lines, you're calling someone on the phone, someone answers with, hey, and they ask you about the weather, and they're all kind of excited on the phone, then yeah, you got to come back with that level of energy as well to kind of meet them where they are. What's compelling for them? So as you ask questions, what do you understand about them? As an organization, if you're going in commercial lines, what is compelling for them? If it's a colleague, what is it that drives them and motivates them? What gets them jazzed up, shall we say? What type of proof? Some people are different, and we'll talk about that now in a second in terms of types of decision makers. What type of proof do they need? Some people need proof, like research proof. Show me the stats. Other people want proof like a reference. Right? So what other clients? Do you have a client or a colleague that can tell me how it's worked with you before? So what type of proof do they need? And how do you communicate with them? Are there someone, again, it's from an energy perspective, but also are they really quiet? Are you having meetings with them? Is there virtual communication? So there's lots of different ways that you can actually communicate with them. So how do you actually get to know who they are? Every single time you do, and for those folks that deal with a lot of personal lines on the phone, you can tell very quickly. You can understand after a couple of questions, have a sense of the person you're talking to. It's hard on the phone, I get it. Commercial lines, you're probably sitting in front of somebody, and you've got to be able to understand them and read them and understand, do I take it down a notch? Am I being too sort of energetic? Do I need to not necessarily mirror them, but, have those same concepts? Now, in terms of styles, I usually do a larger piece on this, but I'm just going to walk through the different styles, a couple of different ideas on styles, okay? Now, I'm not going to go through the detail for time, but we're going to walk through some different styles that might resonate with you guys. And I'm sure you're going to connect personally with at least one of them. There's different types of styles out there. This is more based on an assessment, so a psychometric assessment in terms of how people make decisions and types of personalities they are. So if you look at, we're going to take the first one called charismatics. And it kind of explains it in the word. But these people are, if you have clients or colleagues, they're very, there's a lot of energy involved. I would probably classify myself more in this one, or my husband would certainly say I am. There's energy. It's all about new ideas. So they live in the world of ideas and what's possible and what's exciting. Very visual people. The one thing, though, about them, they can be all about movement and getting involved, and they want to be involved with everything, but they can have a short attention span, and I definitely can relate to that. I love ideas, which you can probably tell. Often, we can get sidetracked. So charismatics can be very much sidetracked, and I'm sure you know clients or friends or colleagues like this. They like to control the conversation sometimes, and there's often no follow-through. So it's around the idea. The one thing they will do often, which I can attest to, is be very excited about things, but then go think about it for a couple of days, and then the rational side kicks in. And your excitement on something may continue, but it actually may not. It may switch to something else. So it could look a little flippant, like a client who seems really excited about it, and then all of a sudden they just sort of drop. It doesn't really pan out, or you haven't heard back from them. So how do you deal with a charismatic? So you can join their excitement to some extent, but don't join it in the sense of going off and following their path, because they can kind of go off in all directions. So the focus on results, because they do want to hear about results, and again, it keeps them grounded. Simple arguments about the features and the benefits don't overwhelm them. Charismatics don't want to be overwhelmed. Be upfront about the risks and get the most critical information in early. Another thing is it follow through. So I would say for those folks, you have that meeting, and you're creating this decision maker is going to be thinking about it for the next 2 days. So maybe you follow up with some more information that can help them with the rational side, not just the excitable side. So that's just a couple of little quick tips on those sorts of folks. A thinker is someone who is more objective. They like arguments supported by data. So if you're going to argue with them, you come out with your data. You have to be very data savvy with them. They're risk adverse. They're slow to decide. My husband is actually one of these. Not emotionally invested as such. They're all about the best solution, what makes the most sense. So that emotional lever is not going to be pulled quite as much. But their emotional lever, hypothetically, you could look at it in the sense of you give them a lot of data, they'll be very happy about it. They're very logical and a bit guarded. And they're hard to read sometimes, actually. So present the data and don't think too much about it either. So describe how did you get to your recommendations? Sort of walking through those steps so they can understand it. They need to see all perspectives, the risks they have to know up front, and they want to come to their own conclusions. You can't push them. You can't push them. Present it, and I've got clients like this too. I present something, a concept or an idea, and the information behind it, maybe some articles that I've got, maybe some actually do some do a lot of the reading of research. So I send them some updated research that's been done, some studies, and then usually over time, say it might be a month down the road, but they'll call back. It's nothing else for questions. Then we get the skeptics. So the skeptics are, just like it sounds like, often can be very emotional, very suspicious. They need to win. Maybe can be a little bit aggressive and combative. Often very strong personality type. They will hit you with a lot of questions. And the nice thing about a skeptic, though, is you kind of know what they think, right? You know what's going on in their head. They're not going to keep it quiet. They're very open about it. One of the biggest pieces of advice I can give with a skeptic is who's credible. So with a skeptic, and I do this when I work with teams and things too, if there's someone who's skeptical even about some work I'm doing, really understanding who knows them well. So who really understands them, who's credible in their eyes. So if Joe is a skeptic, but he's very close with Mary and they're tag team on a lot of, maybe their clients they tag team on. So getting Mary connected, if I'm connected with Mary and Mary really buys into whatever I'm talking about, then that will help win over Joe. So stay calm, methodical, don't panic with those sorts of people. They can be quite combative, but at the same token, who are they connected to? And, or even if you're in a room of a number of decision makers and somebody's skeptical, see who they're listening to, right? Who is the person that can help sway them in the right direction? Because some skeptics do come around. They absolutely do. Followers, just two more. Followers are basically past experience, right? Risk adverse. Kind of will look at what's done in the past and continue doing that. They can be quite challenging, but in a very respectful way. They can be very interested in what you're talking about, but they won't really, unless there's some proof or references or experience behind it, you can't really win them over very well. So proven methods. So what's proven, what's there? So sometimes if I'm doing something that I know has been proven tenfold in organizations, just to give them some background, send them an article, send them something, or bring along the data, recent data maybe from their industry to show how something has worked, if that's possible, of course. So where's the data for them to help them understand that it happens in other organizations, or percentage of organizations, for example, that you have as clients who actually are using that, or maybe in terms of claims would be a great one, right? For those sorts of folks, you know, hey, well, look, this has happened, and here's what's actually assisted, 20% of our client base has this, and here's how, from the claims perspective, how it's panned out. Lastly is controllers. So controllers like to be in control, but they're all about facts and analytics. So they don't like uncertainty. They're very logical, sort of scientist, research type organization. Engineers would probably be good ones. I'm being stereotypical here, but who could be. Don't want to be rushed. They want to take their time. They're comfortable with silence. So you really need to sort of take your time with them, be prepared for the silences. Experts really come into play here as well. If you have someone who's an expert, or someone even on your team, if it was a client, or someone, if it's a colleague you're trying to influence, someone who's an expert in that area, or who's been through it before, knows the organization really well, or the industry really well, can they help? An HR expert, if it's something HR related, do you have an HR professional there that you can take along with you? And don't rush them. So everyone sort of falls into these some way, shape, or form. It depends on the topic. sometimes we can be skeptical if it's something that we're very emotional about, as an example, have been through something difficult in the past. So it can change, but we generally lean towards one or two of these. There's ways to deal with all of them, and when the only thing I'll say there in terms of adaptability is if you're with a client or a colleague and you're sussing them out and you're sort of noticing, yeah, they seem to be this way, then you have to adapt to relate to that. So if you go in and you don't hit the mark the first time around, just notice. Don't be hard on yourself. Just notice. Okay, what are they listening to? Who are they listening to? What words are they using? Right? So I can judge in terms of who they are and how I can approach them next time. All right, so that sort of brings us through the stakeholders piece. And then we get into pre-work. And with pre-work, it's all around preparing yourself. So you've got a sense of how credible you are, what your position is, who the stakeholders are, and the significance of how important that is. So a couple of things you can do, whether it's internal or external client, colleague, whatever it is, or your boss you're trying to influence, understanding more about it. So you might have a sense of, oh, I've seen this so many times in companies. Somebody goes in, or my clients, coaching clients, they'll say, I have this great idea and I totally got shot down. And oftentimes they're so excited. You might be a charismatic type person. You go in all excited about this idea, really, this is going to be excellent, this is going to be amazing, but they haven't done their due diligence. So all of a sudden they realize, oh, wait now, I've only been here 5 years. And something like this was done in the past I didn't know about. So I should have probably talked to a few people about it. Who are the people that are actually making decisions on it? Who are the influencers that I can meet with and have a sense of, for example, with regard to organizations, when I talked about business development, I always sort of say hit them from all sides, right? So every organization, you know, if our firm was going to talk to a client or potential client from a business development standpoint, we tell each other what we're doing. So we make sure that, yeah, we hit it from all sides. Everyone gets to know who we are. Everyone has a sense of, you know, what we can bring to the table. We can actually, and we do individual meetings in all different layers and levels, you know, over a period of time. This is, we're not hardcore BD or anything, but over time we'll sort of say, yeah, who do you know? And you know, have you met with that person? Do you know what they're really looking for, what their challenges are, what keeps them up at night, that kind of stuff. Then based on that, you revise your position. So what do we know about them? What do we know about the person? What do we know about this new colleague? How do I actually deal with it and adapt, right? If I want something, I'm the one who has to think about adapting. Understanding where the conflict is. So decision makers have conflicts. I see organizations that have, say it's two partners at the top who are very distinctly different, right? Maybe you've got an accountant and a marketing person that run the organization. So how do you adapt and how do you look at the conflict between them and help them sort out their differences to agree on whatever you're trying to support them on? The emotional levers that play into it, what's the resistance that could happen? Is it because they've currently got some a broker that they're working with and they're comfortable with? So how do you work on that over time? How do you decrease that resistance? And the evidence and what's meaningful for them. So one question I just want to say, socializing your ideas. What would that look like? Socializing your idea with a client. What do you think that could be? I think I've got everyone stumped. I did make the mistake of last time. I can see the chat box. Socializing your ideas are really about getting people to understand what they mean. So understanding, for example, I mentioned that person, that charismatic, who probably went in with this really cool idea. That happens a lot. Everyone's different. So think about all the different types of decision makers I put up there. So if I go in all excited and jazzed about this idea, if I haven't they don't understand the idea, I haven't walked through the idea, I haven't made the linkages for them, I haven't showed them with the research, I haven't showed them. So how do you socialize it? How do you get each person to actually relate to it? So you socialize it in different ways. You could talk to some people about it in one way, some people with another. Again, hit organizations at different levels around the concepts. So I know it's a funny little word. I just thought I'd try it and see if you had an idea. But just kind of socializing your idea to meet everyone, so where they are, right? The type of person they are, You talk to people about it, maybe you email them about it, you send them research about it. How do you socialize so they're becoming more comfortable with that idea? Say it's a new offering you have as an example. Okay, responding in real time. So this is when you're going to adapt. I have a video in a second. I'm just going to, hopefully the sound will work. So you're getting into, you've done all your homework. You're actually going in and you're actually having a conversation with somebody. So I'm going to see if this works now. Just a second. If somebody can't hear it, put it up in the chat. Thanks. Hang on. All right, sorry folks, you couldn't all hear us. Essentially, it's the U.S. Navy basically asking. I don't have a link to it, sadly, but I could find a link. It's really good and it's really funny, but it makes a lot of good points. So essentially, the U.S. Navy is saying, you know, you better move. And then the guy ends up elevating it up because the guy won't move. He's like, this person's on a radar and they won't get out of my way. And then, so the U.S. Navy basically to get the commander on and says, this is the commander of the biggest ship in the U.S., in the North American fleet, and you better move. And then he finds out, the guy goes, well, I'm a lighthouse mate. Your decision. So essentially it's, you know, did he do his due diligence? I don't think so. So I apologize for that. You couldn't hear it very well. I don't have the technology to put it through the computer there. Because I'm on telephone, but it sort of makes a point about, first of all, credibility. Does it really matter that the person's the U.S. Navy if you're a lighthouse? Did the person ask questions? He got very combative. It certainly wasn't influencing in the right way. So for anyone that did hear it, hopefully you enjoyed it. Okay, so in terms of resistance, you've got different types of resistors. So now we did something similar to this before, but just to give you a sense of, you know, where you fall. I think a lot of us kind of know where we naturally fall, but it depends on whatever's happening. If I want to be a champion or I want to actually be a resistor. So, but generally you'll tend to lean on one of these. So for example, on the left-hand side, you'll see fighters. So these are people that are actively and openly resisting change. So these are the ones who you want to bring something new, a new coverage, whatever it might be, they're going to fight against it. And we know them, they exist. Those will be more of the skeptical folks. And then we'll find the resistors. So those are the people which actually are quite frightening, because those are the people that you don't even know about. They're actually quietly resisting. They're covertly resisting. So, you know, you might not know about it. If it's a colleague or if it's a client, you know, they might say, oh yes, thank you very much, we'll consider it, but they're actually not going to. So with regards to the bystanders, go with the flow folks, they're the undecided ones. So they're the ones who are kind of like, oh, well, we'll see which way the wind blows. Is this something, you know, maybe they're bringing this change internally, but, you know, we all know that that's not going to actually happen, right? We'll just wait and see if it happens, or see which way most people are leaning, and we'll go with those folks. Then we get the helpers, who help the process and support and provide resources, so they're really helping move it forward. And then you get the champions, who are all over it, like, oh my God, we need this, or this needs to happen, and how can I help you? And I'll take it to the next level for you. So where do you think you should spend where do you think we spend most of our time normally? Who do you think we spend most of our time with? Yeah, sadly, the fighters. Yeah. The vocal squeaky wheel, sadly, happens. And this happens when you think about it, change in general in organizations. We tend to, the squeaky wheels are the ones we try to convince. Who should we be spending our time with? when we're trying to influence people and pull them along. Like say there was an executive team and you had all these sorts of people there. Who do you think would be the people that we need to work with, spend most of our time with? Yeah, it could be the helpers. It could actually be the helpers, yeah, because they're keeping things moving. And the resistors too. The resistors tend to be a large group, and the go with the flow folks can be swayed quite easily. So the helpers are already bought in. So when you spend time with them and help them understand, they actually have a big impact. There's usually quite a few of them. And then if you say you had 10 people and you had 2 helpers, and then you had 2 resistors, the go with the flow people will actually, if the helpers are really connected with them, can certainly help out as well. Who do they listen to, right? So yeah, I mean, essentially the middle bunch. The champions are already sold, and the fighters are already going to be skeptics anyway, so they're not going to come around. So who are the people that you need to spend the time with? And absolutely, depending on the situation, you're absolutely right, that middle group. So when you look at yourselves and you look at people that you work with and teams, but you also look at clients and creating influence, one of the worst things we can do is be the but person. So, and you'll see this a lot with the skeptics. They might not say but and they'll be the ones who will bring up the but, you know, oh, we won the lottery. Oh, but, right? So in terms of the way you work, but also working with others, how do you be an and? So an and is someone, when you're creating influence, if a client comes up with something, a but. So, but that doesn't mean we can't do this or we can't do this. So how do you turn it into an and? How do you say things that are building on what other people are saying? So say they say, well, that's not going to do this or that's not going to do that. Say, well, and if you add this to there, that will give you coverage that will do this. So you're taking it more of an and. You're not trying to be combative. Once you get in your 2 little corners, you're not going to be able to create influence and persuade others. You have to try to be a I always think of it like a little snowball. You start out with a little tiny bit of snow and you add on to someone, and then you add on to someone's conversation. So even if they're saying something a little bit different. So I said, what about this great idea? And someone says, well, but, oh, but how about an and? And this could happen, which is bad. And if we do this, we can mitigate that risk, right? So there's ways that you can add on and build that snowball in a positive way, which is how Einstein actually worked with his colleagues. So how do you make it an and, not a but? And we use but far too many times. And a however, by the way, is still a but. So just a couple of quick tips here. So because these things happen all the time. When I do a lot of training and things, I see this a lot. And also just when you're working with clients. So somebody has a dumb suggestion. So think about it happens, right? You're in a meeting, someone comes out with something that you call dumb. Not necessarily dumb, but you see it as a dumb suggestion. So how do you respond to that? Right? How do you be inclusive? How do you create an and so you can learn more? Number one thing in all this here for this slide is be curious, right? There could be more to it you're just not understanding. So help me understand what you're trying to achieve, right? Understand, because oftentimes I've said things in meetings and I didn't explain myself well. It may as well come off as a dumb suggestion just in someone's mind. But when I explain it more and they understand the thought process, maybe that'll help. So negative reaction in others. So, and this, I've used this, with clients or in sessions, get the sense we're not on the same page here. Tell me more about what you're thinking, right? These are ways you can be curious, non-judgmental, to keep the conversation going, right? With a client, absolutely. They're getting really reactionary and getting a sense we're not on the same page. Tell me what you're thinking about, what's going through your mind, what's causing this. Strong views are expressed without any reasoning or illustration. So they're just really strong-minded. So there's something, this is where keeping curious is really important, right? You might be thinking in your head, what the is this person going on with, or why are they so caught on that? Well, maybe that's a really important thing for you to figure out, okay? So as opposed to getting defensive, this is really important for you. This sounds like a key issue for you. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Like, I'd like to understand more. What's important about that for you? Right? So again, some way to do it, if something goes off tangent, right? Conversation, whatever, you're in a meeting or you're trying to influence at your leadership table, whatever it might be. I think we might be losing focus. Tell me how this fits in. Or again, do we park that for another day, make sure you do. And lots of views are coming out at the table. So they're all like, somebody wants this, somebody wants this, somebody wants this. And sometimes I've seen that with clients as well when you have a very diverse group. If I'm sitting with an executive team or whatever, they have different ideas. So, okay, we've got 3 or 4 ideas going on the go here. Before we add another one, let's just take a minute and address each one individually. I'll often write it down if there's a board there, or do whatever. So those are little ways to kind of keep yourself grounded from being biased and getting a but in your head and not listening to somebody, but it can also help keep that conversation going, right? Learn something more about your client, even though they're being a bit combative. How do you actually, because they will come down from it most times. Okay, so in the last few minutes, we're just going to talk about building a broad network. One thing about influence and persuasion is it's around who you are. So we already talked about credibility before. Credibility is all around who I am before I even walk in the door. So if I'm going to have a new meeting with someone, I get calls, you know, hey, Heather, I heard about you. Do you do this? I mean, they might have heard something about me. So there's a little credibility to actually take 5 minutes out of their very busy day to call me. But that's because my network is getting broader and broader, right? People are actually hearing about. So if I'm looking for insurance coverage, I'm like, wow, you know, I got a new company, and I talk to someone says, oh, this person's great, or I heard this person's really good at that, or I know you're unique in what your risks are, right? Maybe it's something very uniquely different. Then, you know, who could they call? I get calls all the time for, as an example, and we'll talk about now what type of network it is, but people call me and I don't, like I had someone the other day ask me for something and I was like, you know, I could do that, but I'm not an expert at that. So let me hook you up. So I hooked the person up with somebody I knew. I even hooked him up with a, believe it or not, competitor of mine because it was this person's expertise. And they valued that so much. They were so thankful that they even called me after the other person had finished and said, thank you so much for the referral. And they called me in for something else. So again, your network is critical. So how does your network work? There's an operational, there's a career-based one and a future-focused one. So what do I need now to operate my business in my position internally and externally from the organization? My career, how does that work, right? How am I networked for my career? And which I always say everyone needs to do at every point in time. It's what everyone should be doing, whether it's internal or external. And future focused, right? How do I look at what do I want to grow into? What do I want to do more of? How do I get into a network that can help me do that? Oh, hang on, I have another one you might not hear. Just let me know if you don't, just a second.
Social networking. Social networking? Everybody's doing it. I have 826 friends. That's a lot of friends. I can find anyone. Okay. I need to put together a team of international finance experts who know merger arbitrage, have 10 plus years experience, speak Cantonese, and can hit the ground running Monday. I don't have any friends like that.
All right. So your network, you know, it's funny, people always say, well, yeah, I've got, 500 friends on Facebook. Well, that's not necessarily your network that you want to have. So when you think about network, now, again, I'll talk about how that can be extremely important in a minute. So there's different types of networks. So you get in terms of diversity. So do you have networks? I want you to really think about your networks now. And again, this could be internal, it could be external. Everyone in an organization like yourselves can be connected and can create opportunities. Okay, so what type of people are they? Are they people? Are you talking about experts around certain topics? Do you have technologies? Are there different viewpoints in your network? So diversity of what types of people, or are you all the same? Are you all like you? Okay, you really need diverse networks. Whoops, I missed number 2. There he is. So many weak ties, which sounds really counterintuitive, I know. It doesn't seem to make sense. But what it means is I've got very close connections of mine, as an example. So if I've got really close connections, they tend to be either really close clients of mine, people in my industry, people who do similar things to me. So they're really connected. We know each other's worlds super well. But what you want are people where you don't know the worlds. You don't know them. It's worlds you want to get into. Right? So having lots of those weak ties where you don't have to spend a ton of time with these people, having a lot of those just, I always sort of, introverts notoriously have, 2 or 3 close friends. Well, this situation, you want 300 not close friends, right? You want lots of weak ties that you can make connections or people that you know that can. So if you've got hub, for example, is knowing something about everything. So, for example, people will come to me about, I'd say I'm a hub for some people. They come to me about anything to do with leadership teams and HR, period. Now, I don't know everything about everything. So if somebody comes to me about, again, like I said with my client, they came to me about something I didn't know, but I know who the people are that they should be connected to. So I've got a large network, so they come to me and I connect them with others, right? So I'm a hub to go that way. And then, so those are people that are connected within my world, and then you have bridges into whole other worlds. It's for who then. So I could know somebody, as an example, who's in a completely different industry. Maybe they're, I don't know, mud loggers. I don't know if you've heard of mud loggers. And mud loggers in the oil patch industry. I might, this mud logger, if I knew this mud logger, but hey, maybe there's a connection or something that that person has. They may know a ton of people. They may be very connected in their volunteer activities, whatever it might be. They have lots of bridges they can make for me. So they have nothing to do with me, but they could make bridges. And that kind of lends itself to understanding your network, right? So what is your network? How would you define your network? Are you weak ties? Do you have some strong ties, some weak ties to kind of help you to connect to different organizations or industries, or other hubs about, some people who, boy, so-and-so knows everybody. Like a colleague of mine, she knows so many people. It was between all the work she's done, but also externally from here before she came here, but also total social person. So she's connected to everyone here. Not everyone, but there's a large chance that between a bunch of us here, we can pretty well have some connection to somebody that's where we need to go. So thinking about who is your network, looking at the opportunities in your network. And I want you to think about right now, I want you to write down one thing in your network, and we're going to do a little bit more in a second, but just one initial thought of something that you need to do more of in your network. So I'm going to take 10 seconds there, so we're going to finish up in a second. What's one person, place, people, industry, type of network that you can do? Need to do more of. Tip as well, you guys are experts in your industry. Where are you speaking? Just a little tip for me is, where are you speaking? Are you getting out in front of clients? So I get out in front of people and do talks all the time. I speak at conferences, I do all these different things. And I can't tell you how many times I have people saying, oh, I saw you, or somebody saw you speak. And that opens up a door, and they call me. So just little things that you can start to do to broaden your network. Last couple of slides here, as we're going to be running out of time. Your sphere of influence. So you got your natural, here's the people I work with every day. Here's the people I work with in the business, within our department, my customers I have, maybe other geographies I work with, maybe I've got clients elsewhere, or I've got colleagues elsewhere. So that's my initial. And then you get into what's beyond that, okay? So, and one thing I always sort of push people to think about, and some people aren't comfortable, I know, how do your personal and your business lives merge? There's opportunities anywhere. Now, I'm the type of person who I'm very comfortable with all that. But how can your home and your work merge in a positive way, right? So, for example, if my daughter's soccer team, if I meet somebody there and we get a chatter, you're waiting. I don't know if you have hockey, kids in hockey, whatever it might be. There's lots of people that you can make connections with. They could be very innocent little connections that turn into something down the road, right? And if you learn about where they work and asking them, and then when you run into them at a work function, wow, all of a sudden you've got some credibility. So where is it, you can actually do that? Is it conferences? Are there mentors out there that can help you broaden into different industries? Their senior leaders, community, is it volunteering, extracurricular, social engagements? What can you do? Everyone has a comfort level somewhere. So what is it you need to do to expand your network to have a bigger sphere of influence? Last thing. So how much time do you think you should dedicate to relationship building in your week? A, B, C, or D? What's your guess? Okay, we got one guess. Oh, a couple of B's. Any more? Well, we're on the right track, B. So this is what they say anyway. Everyone's different. If you're solely committed to business development, obviously it's going to be a little bit different, but everyone should be committing to 5 to 10%. Again, it could be simple talk at the water cooler with someone you haven't talked to before. It could be social. It could, whatever it is, how can you dedicate some time? And when you plan this out, it's amazing how easy and comfortable it can be if it's within, things that you like to do internally and externally. Okay, so I'm just going to put this out really fast. So how do you build relationships? So again, this is a whole topic in itself. One of the biggest pieces of advice is listening and asking questions. We've talked about this before in different things. How do you ask questions? How do you actually, don't be giving advice unless you're asked for it, okay? Or like you say, oh, hey, I've got a thought on that. You know, do you want to hear it? Or, you know, try not to be the person that knows it all, as an example, even though you're probably experts in what you do. Show an interest in the person, show appreciation. And the biggest thing there, I think, is sort of follow up. You know, when you see them, make sure that, first of all, you seek out relationship and you continue that relationship. It could be linking in with somebody, right? It could be sending them an article about something you talked about, or some little thing about that means something to them, to show that appreciation of that relationship. So why is this all last thing? This is the last slide. So what is so hard about all this? What stops us from doing all this? What do you think? And we've got a lot of topics here. Creating relationships, influence. What is it that stops you guys, or stops people, do you think, in general? What stops us? No thoughts. Everyone's stuck. Maybe you're trying to figure out why. Maybe you don't know why. One obvious one's time. Committing to this, investing in this, the time to prepare, the time to actually sit and plan out, maybe there's different industries, things like that. Time, there we go. Never slow down enough. One of the biggest things here is, what if you don't, right? Think of the benefits. You're talking about risk all the time with people. The risk of not doing this. What's the risk of not doing this? You're going to obviously not be able to grow your business, grow your relationships, influencing people, having that credibility. It can really grow your career and your satisfaction, really. So just think about spending even a few minutes a day just thinking about what you could be doing more of, and plan that out. All right, so I want you to write in, please, something for me that you took out of today's session. The next session, we're going to be doing strategic thinking and mindset. So hopefully you can tag in. I think we just have 2 more. I think we'll be doing role of the leader then in June. So please write down something that you learned today. I want to thank you all for your contributions. Sorry about the video. I'll try to find a better way to do it. It's really cute and fun, and makes a, if I do actually find the link, I'll make sure that Carrie can send it out. Anyway, thank you very much. Put in something in the chat box for me, and I'll stay on the line for a minute in case you have any questions. Thank you all. I'll talk to you in a few weeks.